Everyone, it is episode 6 of the Mobile X podcast, and as always, I'm joined here by my partner in crime, Mobile Gamer. Say hi.
Hello.
And today we have a special guest, somebody who's we've been building up for a while, David Brevik, who's actually I think he just recently found out about this, is actually responsible for my addiction to Marvel Strike Force. Just lay it all out there. Just there it is. You know, the burden is now yours, my friend. But just the idea was the void that was left by Marvel Heroes. So I watched you and your wife play the game, and Deegan, Deegan was playing too, and I was like, all right, let's go play. And so that was what it was.
Oh, but you got to give him a bigger introduction. That he's a legend. You're a legend, dude. You're a legend in the industry. I mean, come on.
Let's be very clear. This is the creator of Diablo. The looter shooter. We could say that Hellgate London. We can talk about It Lurks Below in your own indie game company that you now have your newest enterprise, which you want to tell everybody about it right now.
Sure. I actually have several jobs, but I have a publishing company called Skystone, and where I'm funding and helping a whole bunch of other developers create games and giving them creative feedback and things like that. And we have 5 announced titles with that one. The biggest one right now, which is going on Steam Fest, is a Boundary. But we also have Space Lines from the Far Out and Underworld Dreams and Undying, a whole bunch of titles. Last Friend, and then I have my own independent game company called Graybeard Games, where I made It Lurks Below, where I did everything myself. I did all the programming, all the art, the sound, music, made my own engine, etc. And then I'm consulting on a bunch of games I can't talk about, but I'm doing other things as well.
But you've been making games since Sega Genesis days, and you've made some of the biggest games ever, like Diablo, and you've worked with Blizzard, and I mean, pretty large. Like, I mean, you could talk about everything you've done, probably take you in about an hour, right? You've done a lot of things.
Yeah, well, I've been in the industry for 30 years, so that's...
and that's not even saying this to David. I'm going to fanboy for a minute here. You are the person I look at when I look at like the creative vision for video games. You when I've interacted with you, you've said some very, very specific things about the building fun, right? Making fun video games that people want to play, and that's why the games that you've built have been wildly successful. And a lot of people will probably say, the one reason why a lot of people, probably the Marvel Strike Force audience, will resonate with you is Marvel Heroes. And so, you're going to be able to give us some insight into that, and maybe dealing with the Marvel IP if you want to, and all that fun stuff, whatever you feel comfortable talking about today. But I mean, your gaming resume is second to none. You are a legend. And the things that you continue to do for the industry.
Well, thank you.
I think do you want me to play the clip that kind of struck the whole purpose of this interview?
Let's do it.
So here's the backstory is that you and your wife stream on Twitch, and her name is Jungle Queen, correct?
Correct. And
you and you're known for, you play Marvel Strike Force every day, and you've played since the beginning that came out. So you've been playing the game for a long time, and Reminex was watching your stream, and he got some response out of you while you were playing Lost Ark, and I'm going to play that clip. Are you ready?
Yeah.
This is great. Tell us how you really feel. Okay, let's play the clip.
Fucking crashy. I mean, it is unbelievably crashy. Way up there on the most crashy applications I've ever played. Probably the crashiest. Yeah. The game is so fucking crashy. I mean, it is unbelievably crashy. Way up there on the most crashy applications I've ever played.
And then you went on in part 2, and you kept talking about it some more, talking about Marvel Strike Force some more. Oh my God.
Marvel Strike Force, the mobile game. And it crashes
all the time.
All the time. It literally crashes 3 or 4 times a day.
So what do you really think about the crashing in Marvel Strike Force? Oh my
Well, as
God,
you can
right?
tell, I'm not really pleased.
Yeah. What do you, you were talking with McMull and you talked about
Mhm.
maintenance mode and you kind of suggested something
Yeah.
about the staffing levels of the engineers and the industry because the game is in maintenance mode, meaning that it doesn't have, probably does not have increasing revenue at this time. And so they're really trying to cut costs. Talk a little bit about that because that's what everybody's talking about, this maintenance mode. And what does that mean?
Sure. We can talk about it a little bit, but there's kind of different ways that projects there are different phases of, especially like a live service game. There are different phases where you've kind of got, the initial construction of the product, whatever it is, and then through launch. And while it's in launch, then they tend to the staff is at one size or whatever. Usually it starts out, it's small, and then it grows through production, and then once production is done, then they move a bunch of resources off of the project and they move on to other things, and then they reduce the staff size. But as a project, kind of the lifespan of a project goes on, they have lots of, for lack of better description, I can go into really a lot of detail here, but charts and graphs about how much money this project is making, how many people it will take to kind of maintain their revenue, what they can do to maintain their revenue, as well as then free up as many resources. It's in the company's best interest to reduce the staff as much as possible and maintain the revenue as high as possible. And so they do that so that they can go, the resources can go work on other projects that can bring in more revenue. So they go do that. So the object of the game from the game from a corporate standpoint is most money least with the least spend. So they have all these, they can chart how much the game is growing, or if it's not growing, how much it's shrinking or maintaining, and how much revenue it's making and things like that. And then they how much it costs to get a new customer, how much it costs to get a new paying customer, which is the customers they're most interested in. And at some point that number becomes unreasonable, and so they have to then kind of reduce the staff to kind of a lower amount, let's say a small skeleton kind of crew of, let's say, I don't know, 25 people or something like that, which is still a decent amount of people that are working on the product, and they've got a couple people in the art department, a couple designers. They might have less engineers. The engineers might be more focused on new projects and other things like that. They've got a bunch of tools and stuff already set up. They'll still have some engineers, but a lot of them will be more junior because the product is well established. And there might be some senior engineers that are on other projects but can be consulted. They know the code base well enough that they can come work on problems and things like that if they need to, but are taken in kind of on a need-to basis rather than being on the project all the time.
So what does that mean to the everyday player? I mean, Rem and I and yourself are hardcore players. We play the game every day. What does that all mean for somebody that is diehard Marvel Strike Force player that's been playing the game since the beginning?
Well, in essence, the game's not growing, I would guess. And it's certainly not going to grow that much on a content level. The content will be, they don't have a giant crew. They're not trying, the game's, I don't know how many years old, but let's,
four,
5
years, just had the 4-year anniversary is coming up here. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, it's been around a while now, and so, they're not growing the team to get bigger and bigger, and they don't believe that this game is going to become the biggest mobile game of all time or anything like that. Even then, they want to reduce staff. So it just means that content is slower to come out unless their pipeline is really good. They can create characters. Maybe they can create characters without a programmer or with light programming, where they have a bunch of artists creating the models and animations, and visual effects people doing and designers doing the actual skills and things like that. UI artists doing icons and whatnot. So they have like kind of a small group of people that don't require programmers. Programmers are the most expensive and the most, I would say, valuable, but it's not really there. They're all very valuable, but the programmers are kind of, without a programmer, there's no way you can make a game. So they are the resource that's most precious in terms of money and everything. And so they, you want to reduce that as much as possible and make sure that they can create content.
So I'm curious though, because we're kind of in uncharted territory with these mobile titles and freemium models on the life cycle of successful games. I want to put this out there: Marvel Strike Force is wildly successful, right?
Absolutely.
Which is not the same life cycle of a game that you spent $60 on, like Diablo 2, right, or whatever, because that's different. Because this is because we don't have a lot of data on how long these games actually last. I mean, if we look at like Candy Crush or Clash of Clans, because people say, "Oh, the game's going to end in 6 months." It's like, no, it's not. These games could go on for how long? 10 years?
No, no.
Do we even know how long these games can last? I mean, Marvel Contest of Champions, I think, is going on 7 years. I mean, these games are last. I mean, what do we have to look at? Like Warframe, the Warframe model?
Or
EverQuest, World of Warcraft? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. These games will last 10 plus years.
Yeah.
Especially when they're successful. I mean, what Puzzles and Dragons is still going, and that's, I don't know how many, that was probably 10 years ago that it kind of broke out. So, Summoner's War, things like that. There are some older products out there that have been around since since sort of the beginning of smartphones. That really, I don't see ending anytime soon. So it's not going away. It's just that content, the team is smaller. The content will be slower to come out. They'll have character content will be easier to create. They've created a pipeline to make sure that they can create characters, but they're the actual like new modes or new ways to do things will be limited. They'll be piggybacked on other systems, and they'll be slow to come out just because they don't have the resources to create a lot of stuff. And it's not really. It's sort of in the interest of the company to create new stuff because they want to keep their customers around and give them more to do. But in long term, it's not. They feel like they can maintain their revenue by just creating characters, most likely.
Well, I think there's a couple of pieces of the puzzle here. So what's interesting is we've been told something differently. Like Mobile and I, we had an interview with Cerebro, and he said we hired more people. But I think there was something unique that happened in the industry after COVID, and maybe you can attest for it, David. Basically, once COVID started to settle, probably last spring, there was a massive shift where people that were kind of locked in their jobs wanted to go shop the market, right? The resources were out there, and a lot of people moved companies, and that happened to Marvel Strike Force. They lost some of their primary people behind the scenes, and we saw that. We saw some new faces that we interacted with on a daily basis, and we actually met a new creative director with one of Valley's videos, and then shortly afterwards we were introduced to like Tower Mode and Pocket Dimension. But you're right; those were on pre-existing, already in the game mechanics and engines and the like. So I guess the idea is. Were you aware of the article that they wrote? The 300 million we're the most humble, smartest. Have you ever heard? Did you ever see that article? I don't know if you ever.
No, I didn't see that article.
Yeah. Oh
my God.
The guys at Boundless, they put out an article and they basically said we're the most humble, smartest people in the industry.
Well, it also said, this is the right way to do a merger.
Humble.
Yeah, the right way to do a merger is leave us alone and we'll make $300 million. They were basically bragging about how Scopely didn't interfere with the existing structure of the company, and that's how they were able to make $300 million. And it was So it wasn't like, because they're privately held, so it wasn't like a quarterly statement. It was just like they just threw that number out there to boast about it.
Right. Humble brag.
Well, yeah, exactly, and I think it mostly had to do with like they were like in that perfect storm. I said that it was less like that they were the smartest people in the room, and except that it was more like they were the Bubba Gump fishing company out to sea when everybody else was landlocked. There was a massive attrition from Star Wars Galaxy Heroes, which you also play, right?
Yeah.
And then Marvel Future Fight had a little bit of a hiccup, so there was a lot of new players coming in at the right time and could devote the time that Marvel Strike Force requires. Now, that's something that I want to talk with you about. When you first started playing the game, the reason why you kind of left and said, I'm done, Ram, is because of the fact that it was demanding a lot of your time.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that.
So I just think that, this is very... God, this is a complex answer here, but these games are designed to let you play. It's kind of strange. The industry is changing. A lot of them went to this kind of energy system where you could play a little bit. In fact, Marvel Strike Force is on an energy system, but kind of the latest thing is to not give people energy, or basically give them almost unlimited energy, and they end up playing all day. But it is kind of limited, but it's not really that limited. They're giving you energy a bunch every single day. So you're coming back, And, I'm super busy. I've got several companies and things like that. I don't have time to really to dedicate, let's say, 3 hours a day to any particular game. So it's really time consuming. So I've kind of I still play. I play every day. I probably play an hour every day. But I just can't, I do it more on a casual basis now than I did before. I just can't spend that much of my day dedicated to a game for what, really? The point is I'm supposed to be playing this thing for fun and not making it into a chore. It feels like a real grind when you're forced to kind of come back over and over again at specific times and do specific tasks every single day. It's not that I'm enjoying doing these tasks. I'm not enjoying doing, these 2 real-time PvP battles. I just have to check them off my list. And so, I think that there comes a point where the game is more about doing chores than it is about having fun, and that's tough. It crosses this line at some point for me, and so if I play it on a more casual basis, where it's like, hey, if I don't feel like doing the couple of real-time arena battles today, that's okay. I'm not gonna beat myself up about it, and I'm just moving on with my day in my life, and that's all right. And I don't need to be doing this. I don't need to 100% everything every single day. Some days are going to be busier than others. Some days I'm going to feel like doing a bunch of real-time battles. But it just depends on kind of my mood, as well as how much time I have available and things like that. But I try not to get myself into this point where I feel stressed about a game that I'm playing that's supposed to be fun.
What game mode for you is the most fun?
What game mode is the most fun?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I'm not sure which one is the most fun. I'm not sure there is one that is fun. There isn't. One of the things that I've found not only in Star Wars Galaxy Heroes, but also in Marvel Strike Force and other games of this ilk, is that at some point there really isn't anything for me to do. The challenges are kind of few and far between, and it never feels like I get to take my toys out of the toy box. It never really feels like I'm get to play with all of these characters I've put so much time and effort into. I guess maybe a little bit in some of the raids where you got the different teams in the kind of Greek raids or whatever, then those are a little bit better, and then I get to kind of use a few different teams. But once I'd kind of leveled up those teams, there's not really much to do there either. It never really feels, like I said, that I get to kind of like say, hey, I've got this team and this other team and this other team that I get to do something fun with after I've put all this time and effort and sometimes money into. It never, characters kind of like fade away and then they're kind of deemed largely useless. And new things are here, new shiny toys, which are great, but it never really feels like I get to kind of go back and just have fun with all of the characters I've had that I've worked on.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I gotta ask you a question because I have a feeling that you come from an era of where the idea was make the game fun. As long as the game is fun, people will buy the game, right? And it's right. I mean, we're going back like 20 years ago, right? And like that was the plan, right? If you make a quality game that is fun, it'll be successful, right? And it seems like today, and this came out in an interview with your wife actually on the podcast, where it doesn't matter if the game is fun if there's no monetization model as far as mobile titles. If you don't have a way of monetizing this game successfully, it doesn't matter if the game is fun or not. And is that sad, or what are your thoughts on that?
It's incredibly sad. I mean, it used to be, I mean, there's a lot on this as well, but it used to be that was the rule, but the industry was much, much smaller. It was like there were, a couple hundred games a year. And that was largely true. There weren't really, engines weren't ubiquitous. You couldn't just make a game as a team with not much experience in making games or anything like that. You had to create your own engines. You had to like create your own tools and all of this kind of stuff. There was a huge barrier to entry. There was also a huge barrier to entry because of distribution, which we won't get into, but basically there was no way because you had to get physical copies on shelves at stores was a different thing than digital distribution. And so the amount of games was really low and the amount of technical expertise was really there was a big barrier. So having the wherewithal to be able to create your own engine and stuff like that was a big challenge. And a big barrier to smaller studios or, people with not much experience being able to do stuff. So making a game fun and not very crashy usually meant that it sold pretty well. So it was mainly about making these fun games, make it fun, make it stable, and you'll be successful. And that was a great rule. But now, fast forward to today, where you've got easy to use engines that are everywhere with tons of examples and tons of information and documentation and all sorts of stuff, libraries and everything out on the internet that you can just buy or use, and as well as digital distribution, be able to get your game anywhere. And there's been an explosion in games. And now there are, if you count like mobile as well as console and PC, if you put them all together, there are over 1,000 games released a week.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
And so because of that, like trying to stand out in an absolutely flooded market is tough. It's really tough. The average game now on Steam makes $1,500 lifetime.
Wow.
So there are, standing out is rare. Trying to get customers is rare. And then, that is expensive to get customers. It's once you have a customer, you want to hold on to them for dear life because it's really expensive to get another customer. And so like these things our games are designed so that it isn't necessarily about having fun. It's about clinging on to your customers. It's about making sure that you have something new to do all the time. You can look at like Fortnite. Hey, we've got a new season. Come do our season pass or whatever. They're like, come back, come do our thing for a little while. Et cetera, et cetera. It's keep it going, keep it going, keep it going, and give people an excuse to come back over and over again.
So what brought you back to Marvel Strike Force?
Friends.
Yeah. So do you feel like that they built this model with alliances where they kind of like have that FOMO, and if one goes hardcore, that they kind of dragged other people forward? Do you think that's actually happening, or do you think that's something that Mobile and I imagine?
Oh, I think that it's real. There is real psychology there. But I don't know if it works on me.
Well, and maybe it's your tenure in the industry and all that probably makes you a little more immune, or also the fact that you realize that you have other projects that are more important to work on. So let's transition a little bit here. We talked about Marvel Strike Force. Do you feel like that the team is paying attention to the right things
On Marvel Strike Force?
on Marvel Strike Force? Like if you were to sit down with the developers, could you give them a list of things? Like what would be, without going into detail, so maybe they will knock on your door. What would be the things that you would think that they would need to do to make this a better experience, a better game? What's missing?
Well, number one thing is stability. Stability is poor still. And so I think that making sure that the game isn't crashing all the time is first and foremost. I mean, it's really hard to enjoy a game when, let's say you have this, they gave you 5 arena tickets or whatever every day, and I go in and I crash 3 times without completing an arena ticket or whatever. It's like, that sucks. And it's not my fault, but yet the game, is going to penalize me because I haven't even completed an arena match today on my list of things to do, and it's because it's crashing. It has nothing to do with me. Not only that, but they can determine this, right? I mean, the fact of the matter is that they can determine, hey, the game crashed or something went wrong when we entered the match or whatever, and be generous about it. They don't have to be the way that they are. Like, hey, if they didn't finish the match,
Say the word you want to say. Say the word you want to say. I caught you. I know you were forming a word there.
Yes, I was.
I saw it. That's okay. We'll let you have it. But yeah, no, we definitely feel that. Do you feel like they're transparent enough? Like they're letting us know what's happening? Do you feel like that they're if they're honest? Because I feel like I play their games, I know that there's bugs, things I should avoid. We had there's things in games that, hey, a known issue happens when you use the one example I always do is the Thor's hammer bug, which I fought really hard to make sure it was visible, because new players were coming to the game and they were given Thor for free, and encountering that bug in the largest right possible way like you could possibly imagine. And I fought really hard to make sure that was something that was like at the front of the developers, list. I just feel like there isn't a way to interact with that in this game.
Yeah, there isn't. I do. It seems like they aren't prioritizing bug fixes to the degree that I think that I do, as well as I think that most developers should. When there is a bug, I am trying to patch immediately, whatever it is. It depends on the severity, but if it's something like a crash bug or whatever, like I will not go about, waiting 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, whatever, to fix something. I would want to fix it literally that day. And so, crashing in my mind is completely unacceptable. It's got to be unacceptable for them too. Like you said, they got to be losing customers. Like this is a I quit and I'm never coming back again kind of situation. So why that wouldn't be a higher priority, I don't really get. But it seems like it takes a while for them to fix things sometimes.
I gotta ask you. In your McMull video, you talked about your Metacritic score on Marvel Heroes. You were streaming
Right.
the game, and it was, why wouldn't a developer do what you did there? Like, you basically streamed the day, streamed the game. You got a lot of insights. You were able to actually have like a authentic experience that the players are having, right? And then you could go back and change things. And you said your Metacritic score went from the 60s to the 80s. Why don't I don't see developers doing this. Why don't more developers do that? Play the game on Twitch, their own game on Twitch.
No idea. I know that that's all I'm ever going to do for the rest of my career. So, but I don't know why other people don't do it. I've found it super enjoyable. I really loved interacting with the community and playing the game together and meeting a bunch of the community and really feeling like putting my shoes literally in the shoes of a customer in terms of being able to like play and like I didn't have a cheated account or anything like that in Marvel Heroes. I did everything just like a regular customer would, and I found it super helpful to kind of empathize with whomever, with the regular customers, as well as, hey, this is really bothering me. We really need to fix this, et cetera, et cetera. Those things really rose to the top, and so I thought it was a fabulous experience that taught me a lot.
That's I think that's what's a perfect example of why Marvel Heroes is successful. It was one of those games where I played at launch, and I think there was a year one struggle. Was that behind the scenes with investors? Was it? Do you feel like it was rushed out, or do you feel like it was just you needed to get it out there to kind of understand what people wanted to play and wanted to have interactives, or because I know that one thing I'll say to you is Marvel Heroes is an amazing success story. It had mixed reviews when it first came out, and by year one, it was the best. It was touted as the best, renewed game in the industry. And so, what was happening behind the scenes? Was it the Marvel IP? I mean, anything you want to share with that?
Sure. It was mainly because of the investors. Before I became CEO of Gazillion, the CEOs before the first CEO raised a ton of money, and the company started out as an educational entertainment company, and they had raised tons and tons of money, several $100 million, and burned through it and didn't release anything. Well, they released one thing, and it was a total failure. And so they kind of blew all of this money, and the investors were upset, and they're like, well, we're holding on for this one game. And, I told them that it would take 5 to 7 years to make this game. And then they came back and said, well, after I had already brought a bunch of my friends over, after I had already started on work on this big project, and they said, well, I found out about a year in. Oh, there's a contract date. That in the contract, the game has to be released in this particular quarter, by this particular quarter in this particular year, or or we lose the license. So it was that was one of the biggest aspects, is that we couldn't get the thing delayed. We had tried for a long time to negotiate a further date, but it wasn't going to work. Not only because the investors weren't going to give us more money, but also we had this contractual obligation that was no fault of Marvel's or whatever. It was built in by the negotiation from the previous CEO before, and that CEO didn't really know anything about making games. He was a very good CEO and knew a lot about raising money. He was a hyper smart guy, but didn't really know anything about making games, sadly. And so once I got there and I knew how to make games, then they promoted me to CEO. And but by then it was almost too late. Like I had, we were in a tough bind. I wish there was, in hindsight, I wish that we could have called it like early access or beta launch or something like that.
There really wasn't out back then. It really wasn't really like that. There were games that were touching on that, right? If it was really
right, exactly. If we had early access on it, I think it would have told a different tale. And it's hindsight's 2020. But
isn't Fortnite still in early access? It seems like games don't leave their beta stage now. They just perpetually in early access or something. Or
how long was Gmail and beta? That was
right.
Well, and I think that's a testament to it. All right, so Marvel Heroes again. I don't. I think I told you this before, but I used to travel with my gaming PC to be able to play with my friends and alongside you guys. And I still talk to a lot of the guys that are involved in the project. From Asros and Ralnir. I still see those guys periodically. Asros, streaming the project he's working on, the Avengers game. Periodically, we see him. So I mean, it's just you guys had like this magic team too. It was really great to see you guys come together and the passion you had about Marvel and everything like that. And I think I want to see that. I really and maybe that's the bar that you set. I want to see that passion in Marvel Strike Force. I want to see somebody with your passion and your team's passion in Marvel Strike Force. I'll be honest with you, that's probably my own fault because you set some pretty hefty expectations there. But all that being said. Let's talk about it. You always said this, that the hardest thing to do is to get like your heroes to be able to be playable characters and capture them. What character do you think in Marvel Strike Force captures the best, and which one misses the mark heavily? I know you're a Marvel fan, so you can definitely say this. So
right.
which one do you think off the top of your head?
That's a good question. God, I don't know. I mean, mainly it's just because Icarus is on the top of my
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, it's so broken.
Oh my god!
But he's kind of broken in the Marvel universe too. So that's
they got it right. So it's kind of funny because I think that's probably a balance they had to strike was like capture like this this guy that's god level near god tier, right? And they got it. But the impact it had on the game is a whole other story.
Yeah, exactly.
How about the character you think they missed the mark on? Anybody you think was like, why does the guy even exist? What do they do? Why can't they fix this guy?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say that now. I mean, for instance, Thor. I mean, Thor is so fragile that it's kind of frustrating to play him because he's not fragile in the comics, right? I just feel like I think that thematically he works great, but he's such an old character that that hasn't been updated, that it's not really, that you get into a situation where it doesn't feel like Thor anymore. And I don't know what they can really do about it besides update things like they did with Gamora or something like that. Like, it'd be really nice if they could give some of these old characters who were like, even Hulk or Thor or things like that, to make them more on par with what they should be given kind of the other characters. But again, they're not going to do this because that's not really the model. The model is get people to buy the new shiny things, not the old stuff. They already invested in the old stuff. They're going to do limited amounts of boosting on kind of old characters. They will, but it won't be the same as they're not going to constantly be rebalancing everything. They got to have new stuff that people want to invest and purchase. That's more powerful. It's just kind of the story of games or games as a service in general. You got to get that new piece of armor and WoW that's like slightly better than your last one or whatever. You got to have this chase. You got to have this grind. You have to have a reason to like go out and do these things. And if it's the same as what you've got, then it's not as compelling. So having new shiny stuff that does cool things and are powerful is the way that you keep people around.
Yeah. So I mean, was there any character that you thought was like this last patch that you were like, I'm going to skip them because they weren't powerful enough?
I'm trying to think of. I didn't. Did you? I'm sure. I don't know. There are a bunch of characters that I've enjoyed playing recently, but I haven't given them all a try. I think that I'm trying to think what just came out. I'm blanking on who just came out.
Kate Bishop.
Kate Bishop, right?
Echo.
I haven't. I don't have Kate Bishop yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's an example, right? That you didn't feel like you were enticed to buy them because they weren't like necessarily, Icarus level, right? Power, but
right.
And that's just, and I think that's a problem. We're giving them buying signals too.
Yeah,
and that's what they're going to sell us is. these characters that are continuously these powerful characters, because that's what our buying signals are. So I think it's interesting, at an MSF standpoint. So I'm going to ask you the hardest question I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to let Mobile kind of go into see if he has any follow-up questions for you. This is the hardest question I've been wanting to ask you, because it's sitting with me differently. So we have the Steam model for video games and distribution, right, with the digital distribution, and now we're seeing the Microsoft juggernaut kind of pick up steam here.
Mm-hmm.
Is that good for games? Do you feel like as a developer that's going to be good for how you want to build games, or is it you think it's going to help you get your guys' games out there?
No,
Tough one to navigate.
Is it good for games? Yeah, I mean, in some ways, sure. In some ways, in a lot of ways, it doesn't matter. Specifically in the Microsoft, Activision, Blizzard situation, has very little impact on the industry, in my opinion, in terms of maybe down the road it has a little bit more of an impact, especially to PlayStation. But it doesn't really have much of an impact to them. I mean, I hope that Microsoft comes in and institutes some adult policies at Activision Blizzard, but they are already a mega company. They were already a mega corp. So like being a bigger mega corp is like, is that really going to change much? Probably not that much.
I played Cyberpunk. Yeah, that it could.
It could. I mean, it could have an impact. Who knows? It could be positive. Like, I think that Microsoft's acquisition of Mojang and Minecraft has been pretty positive. That the changes and stuff that I've seen out of Minecraft and the kind of cool things that they've added to the game have been great. Like this last patch or whatever in Minecraft was amazing. So there are success stories of companies acquiring other companies and it being a positive thing. There are plenty of negative ones too, so it's hard to tell, but we'll see. I think that is it good for games? I don't know. I don't know if it really makes that much difference. It's not going to change the amount of games. There are kind of two categories of games, or maybe 2.5, where you've got like the big AAA games that like big companies are making. They get all the press, and then you've got kind of mobile games, which make a ton of money, but the press doesn't really talk about for some reason. And then we've got, and then you got kind of indie games, and that indie games is just a sea of all sorts of games you've never heard of and probably never will hear of, and they barely make money, and there's only a few standouts a year.
Lightning in a bottle, right? So I guess the last thing is, I'm a parent. We talk about parenthood a lot. What do I give advice to my kids who want to build video games? Should they focus on the engineering aspect, as it's always the most valuable portion of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I would recommend engineering. I mean, being an artist or a musician is also a decent path, but engineering is the most valuable. As an engineer, you can do it all, right? You don't technically need anybody else to make a game then. Because you might be a bad artist, but you can buy art or contract art or things like that as needed. But it's different than if you're just a designer or you're just a artist or whatever, and you don't have the skills to actually put a game together. It all comes down to programming. So I would focus there.
So your resume is you do musician as well?
Yeah, I mean, I played piano since I was, I don't know, 10 or something. And I was like in marching band. I was percussionist, and I was in marching band all through high school and in college, and I play ukulele, and I play guitar, and I play all sorts of stuff.
That's a lot of stuff here. And it's funny because you listen to the sounds and the music in Diablo, and how much of that did you contribute to?
Not much. I mean, I gave feedback to Matt, but Matt and I have always been close. We would always set up our offices right next to each other. We would play music with our doors open, and we listen to the same kinds of music to try and establish the mood of the game and things like that. But Matt is a true genius, and it was largely his doing for the Diablo soundtrack.
Do you think you could make Diablo in today's environment?
Sure, you could. Would it be as successful? I don't know. It depends on a zillion factors. But sure, you can invent a new style of game like a Diablo. But it was a little bit of right time, right place, and it was a bunch of different things. It was kind of the advent of internet play, and be able to put it in the box where you can play with other people over BattleNet. That was the first BattleNet game, and to have that, as well as being kind of this different style of RPGs, largely for the most part were like groups that you were controlling. You had like 6 different characters in your party or whatever, so kind of a solo version of that was very different at the time, as well as really action oriented and not about dragons and elves, were all big changes, and one of the reasons that it kind of stood out, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, you definitely have given a lot of other insights to that. I've seen you actually talk about it. You've been on documentaries and stuff like that. Just the Diablo creation is a miracle in of itself. The way that you guys work with it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna let you go over to mobile. See if he has any follow-up questions for you.
No, I just think it was absolutely fantastic. Hang out with you and get some insights, especially on how it affects the Marvel Strike Force players and your experience. I think it's just a unique insight that is welcome to the community for sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part of our community, and always with your honest and feedback. So that's gonna wrap up this episode with David Brevik. The legend himself. I mean, and I you're too humble and you're modest, because I don't think you've and you look at that resume. I'm sure people know that you're doing consulting work now. You're going to get more people knocking on your door down the road. But I think you've created so much of the games that we love, and at least been the principal when it comes to what they imitate, right? And so, we look at Marvel Future Revolution and kind of like how it tried to fill the Marvel Heroes void, and it was funny, getting you guys take on that too, while we were live and streaming that. But anyway, I really appreciate you being on here and giving us the time. And so anything else you want to plug? You want to plug your wife's Twitch stream so you guys swear on, instead of on the YouTube?
Yeah, we don't stream as much as we used to, but if you can catch us at The Jungle Queen on Twitch. That's our channel, and we try and stream every week now, but now that I have 8,000 jobs and she has a full-time job, it's we'll see how much we get to do that. But yes, and then I have Skystone. Watch out for our games, and It Lurks Below is on Steam.
Yeah, you know what I'll probably do? I'll probably do some type of giveaway with It Lurks Below coming up soon again to get some people back on it. Like maybe I really love that game. I thought is there going to be a sequel? I always tease about it.
Lost Tark.
So
yeah, I mean, never say never. That's for sure. I'm kind of busy right now, but I really hope that I get the time to do it.
Sounds awesome. All right, David, I appreciate your time. All right, guys, we're going to sign off and catch you next week. We got some other special guests coming up. This one's going to be a surprise as well. And we'll hope to keep you guys tuning in. Thanks for catching the Mobile X podcast, the crossover between mobile games and the mainstream industry. What a better guest to have that exemplifies that with our good friend David Brevik.
Bye for now.